Hello there, my name is Philip Shepherd. I'm the Secretary General of IPRA, and welcome to today's webinar, Thought Leadership webinar in our monthly series. So we're delighted today to welcome Tony Langham. Tony has been in the industry for over 40 years and is recognised as one of the UK's leading reputation management PR consultants. He co-founded his firm Lansons. He led that firm for 33 years, paving the way for a recent acquisition by Team Pharma. Today, he is an active consultant working full-time in a role fighting for reputations of governments, organisations, and companies. And he's going to talk to us today about the image of PR. He'll talk for about 30-40 minutes, and then we'll take a Q&A session. If you have any questions, please write them in the dedicated Q&A box, which you can find on the top left of the little chat box, which is on the right of the screen. And I will field those with Tony when we're ready. So, hope you enjoy the presentation, and over to you, Tony.
Philip, thank you very much. And I guess for most of us it's afternoon, so good afternoon, and thank you for joining today. It's a pleasure to talk to you here from London. I've never spoken about this subject before, and it was interesting to me. I was interested to be asked by the IPRA. So I'll start with the question: is the image of PR holding us back? And I think I got the slide right. And of course, the answer is clearly yes. Wherever PR is portrayed, and I just chose 3 portrayals of PR people from across very much watched TV and movies in the last few years. I chose 3 examples, and we tend to be portrayed, and I say we, assuming that we'll call ourselves PR people, we tend to be portrayed as somewhere between malicious and trivial, and I think I'll have much more to say about that as we go through. But it's clearly complicated because sometimes PR's nowhere to be seen, and many of us, I think, don't use the term very often, and I'm one of those. And I think increasingly our world isn't a world where you can say it's one industry, it's the PR industry. Our world covers all those things. People call them specialise in financial communications. When we're in a business world and we're in a corporate world with other professionals, I think all of these terms are valid, and all of these terms are used by some people. And very often, the word public relations and PR is not referred to at all. Myself, I've for a while been describing what I do as reputation management. I mean, I wrote a book 5 years ago, which was that reputation management is the future of corporate communications and public relations. So I did include the word public relations, and I've lived with that for the last few years. And I'm not convinced that thesis and that prognosis is right. In that time, reputation management has come to many people to mean online reputation management and digital reputation management. Lots of law firms have used the term, and probably as many law firms major on the term reputation management as communication strategy advisory firms. So I'm not sure that's the case. And actually, when I've been presenting recently to clients for business for the kind of work that I do, I've started to use the term special situations to characterize what I think I do the best. I also have a view of, where's our industry going? Where is marketing services going in this integrated world? I have a problem clicking slides sometimes on this. So I formed a view that probably the whole of marketing services and silos are disappearing across the whole industry, focusing on 2 really important things that we do as an industry, and I include the industries that were formerly called advertising, PR, and all the other industries I listed on that chart. And I think we probably do 2 things, and they cross over. On the one hand, we build reputation, brand, trust, something that's fundamental to success of all organizations. And on the other hand, we do things that lead to sales, marketing from the top of the funnel, from consideration through to purchase. So we do those 2 things, and maybe PR is a subset of that. And talking about whether PR exists, if I look at I'm going to describe them as the 2 most successful firms in the PR industry, discuss that term in a minute. Edelman doesn't use the term in describing itself. says it's a global communications firm that partners with businesses and organizations to evolve, promote and protect their brands and reputation. It's not a million miles from how I've been talking about it. The most successful corporate firm, I think we can say, is probably Brunswick. We could argue, but it's certainly up there. And Brunswick says it's a strategic advisory firm focused on critical issues and critical stakeholders. Our purpose is to help our clients play their role in the world successfully. So PR is not particularly to be seen. And where I now work, Lanson's Team Pharma, part of Team Pharma across Germany, Switzerland, Austria, the Netherlands and the UK. I mean, we say we're building the European management consultancy for integrated communication, desiring to use that word, management consultancy. So the word PR isn't there to be seen in much of that. But when I think about it, I don't think any of us can entirely escape the PR tag, and we certainly haven't escaped the PR tag. Those firms I just mentioned, I looked at the two biggest things that those firms have done in the last 12 months. The biggest thing Edelman has done in the last 12 months is the Trust Barometer, always launched at Davos. How Edelman build in Fortune and across other places, Richard Edelman is a PR guru. The most significant thing Brunswick have done is help incoming Prime Minister, I believe he will be, Keir Starmer, obviously the UK election is happening at the moment, get closer to business. But when that's reported, Brunswick are called city spinners, meaning the word spin doctor, and they're described as a public relations company. Here in the UK, many of you will know Simon English, long-standing journalist who's probably the main writer in a sort of funny stroke critical stroke interesting way on our industry. And when FGS, including formerly Finsbury and obviously other firms within WPP and outside that now obviously, rebranded, he wrote a strategic advisor for the stakeholder economy, which I'm sure means something to someone. So when we try and redefine ourselves, we get met with other views and we're not entirely successful, I think, in redefining ourselves. And we also can still be labelled PR. I've always been taken, when I think about reputation, I've always been taken with trying to look into other fields. I always thought Eminem's song, The Way I Am, probably described reputation as well as any academic has. You know, I am whatever you say I am. And if I wasn't, then why would you say I am? And I think that's true of lots of us that work in that jigsaw puzzle I showed you earlier of lots of different things that we refer to ourselves as. So the PR tag is not far from us. And then, of course, we have our infrastructure. When we come together, we need to come together as professionals in whatever it is we think we do and be part of discussing best practice like we are today. And, of course, our infrastructure, whether it's in the UK, the PRCA, the CIPR, in America, the PRSA, where we are today, the IPRA, in India, the PRSI, and I could go through lots of other countries. Public relations or PR tends to be included. And that's where we showcase our best work. That's where we win our awards. That's where we promote ourselves. And in that sense as well, the media that write about us, Provoke, PR Week, and otherwise Inside News on Public Relations and Marketing Communications. So the very infrastructure of the world we inhabit, if it exists at all, is always around the word PR. And then we have the eternal question of how do you describe what you do to your parents or to your friends who don't work in business? And it's hard enough explaining PR. I mean, I have for years actually said I help manage reputations, although I did say that recently to a neighbour who was a doctor, and they said, I've no idea what you just said when I use the term reputation management. And I just wonder, I mean, slightly facetiously, but also funnily, that's whether someone that works at FGS, when in a pub, that's what they do, says, I'm a strategic advisor to the stakeholder economy, or whether they, like so many people, resort back to saying it used to be called public relations, or you might know it as public relations, or even wasn't that PR. So in preparing for this and this subject, I start off thinking where I live in my real life in the corporate communications world alongside other professionals, thinking, well, I don't really use the term PR and public relations. But then I also realize that I live in a world where that's what lots of people describe what I do. That's what lots of clients describe what I do. And that's very much the world that we inhabit. And in this sense, I'm going to say PR has a poor reputation. And before I talk about what we might do about it, accept that we exist as an industry. I wanted to just delve into how the poor reputation exists. And it starts, of course, with where I've just been with understanding. There aren't many surveys of what people think of PR. This one's from 2019 in the UK by Ginger Research for PR Week. Then you have two things I think are fundamental to how PR is seen. 62%, this is a general public survey, 62% say they don't know what PR is, but that doesn't stop 92% of people saying that it's primarily used to deceive the public, and then 17% saying PR professionals lie for a living, which I think most of us are going to refute. So that is a perception out there. How does PR appear in the news, in the vernacular? How does it appear? Well, there are very few PR triumphs, but there are very, very many PR disasters. I'm indebted to the marketeernist for this cartoon. I mean, so often the term PR disaster is described to use things that are nothing really to do with PR at all, as that cartoon illustrates. And I just happened to punch PR disaster in to Google over the last for the last 7 days before I spoke here. The Pope being recorded making confidential remarks is described as a PR disaster. I mean, possibly even more broadly, Elon Musk's what Elon Musk has done to Twitter, turning it into X, and how he's managed it is also described as a PR disaster. So PR disasters appear in the vernacular without much understanding of what that is. I think we can all agree that PR is undervalued, or I hope we can. I'm certainly going to say it's definitely undervalued. Look at pay. PR professionals, typically the average in the United States, according to Muckrack, $85,000, $40,000 in the UK, according to PR Week, similar figure on Glassdoor. More than journalism, as that chart shows. But in the bidding war that's happening in other professional worlds, which has radically changed over my time of working in terms of the discrepancy. Clifford Chance, for instance, here in the United Kingdom, in the bidding war in law firms, just announced that all qualified lawyers, which can happen within 3 years really of starting work in a law firm, will be paid in excess of £150,000, many more in excess of that. The average investment banking salary on Glassdoor is about £194,000, including bonuses, where PR is £37,000 on Glassdoor. And I'm going to say that's undervalued without commenting on either of those professions. And I know it's undervalued because I've actually got, I'm one of those people, like many of you may be, lucky enough to have another life, in that I have a non-executive life. And a lot of that's in horse racing. I work 1 day a week in horse racing, where I'm chair of Great British Racing. That's me and Claire, the co-founder of Lansons, also who I'm married to, at the Derby a couple of weeks ago. And I actually know we're undervalued because I go into some rooms as the chair of horse racing, and I go into other rooms as a reputation manager, strategic consultant, PR person, and they're very different how you're received. The other way in which, crucially, we don't have the reputation that we could have is that our industry still doesn't represent the world we live in. It doesn't represent the global majority world. It doesn't represent the split of wealth within society. I mean, it's too narrow in its construction, as many of you know, but that's probably a presentation for another time. So if I've dissected I think we all have to accept we're labelled PR, whatever it is we like to tell people we do. I've dissected what that means in terms of, I'm going to say, yes, it has a poor reputation. Then I'm going to stand back and say, blimey, we're involved in some fundamentally crucial things though. And all of these things I'm going to say are not identifiable to, you might say, a particular PR person or PR firm, but this is the work that people like us do from day to day. I mean, we help people win elections by distilling arguments, running campaigns, running persuasive campaigns and persuading people, and obviously other elections too. Yes, we can, and hope, as well as make America great again. We crystallize social movements and we drive social change. Hashtag Black Lives Matter, hashtag Me Too. People like us are involved in turning real issues into things that millions of people relate to and change society. And obviously I could go on, and for corporations are often hugely important things. And I don't want to come here pretending that I'm saying we're an industry that only works for good. I mean, we work on lots of commercial campaigns. I picked some from the last 20 years. People like us have been persuaded the US House of Representatives to classify pizza as a vegetable, helped market opioids, and for many years persuade the world that saturated fats were a bigger danger than sugar, where they're probably not. But the point of this section is we're involved in significant things. We do important things. We're crucial to corporate life, government life, and the fabric of society. So if I answer the question that was posed at the start, if the image of PR is holding us back, what's it holding us back from? I'm going to say money, in terms of what we're paid as as organisations and people. I'm going to say respect, influence, positions of power, and something that I have personally experienced, because I've got, literally, as you saw, two hats. I have the top hat of horse racing, and I have the hat of an advisor, and the image holds us back from those things. At this point, I think, because we're in a world, you have to add the layer of, given that AI is the future of everything, because I'm going to say what should we do about it, but I'm going to talk about the future as well. What difference does AI make? Well, I think none of us know, but you can point to some very clear things, certainly in terms of distilling arguments and actually writing and producing content. Clearly, AI is going to reduce the specialness, reduce the specialness of what lots of us do, in terms of making that accessible to lots of other people who will be able to feed information into things and produce much of the content that we produce. On a much grander level, if there isn't regulation, particularly in the United States, of AI bots and the things that AI bots will be capable of, not quite yet capable of, although they are in the sense of obviously manipulating Google search, it will make our job very different and make our job a kind of cyber battle. Although if regulation comes in, it may make our job very differently. But I think it will still leave, the issue of advice at the most senior level open, and it will still leave coordinating campaigns and working out how to run things. But I don't think it changes the fundamental point that we will still be in that position of potentially being labelled and potentially having to confront the issue of PR and public relations. So with the setup, I think I will talk about a few areas where I think we can do something about that. And I'll have a drink of tea before I do that. What should we do about it? Well, I think something's happening now that will continue happening. And I mean, people at the campaign and creative end of our industry, and those of us like me at the corporate and reputation advisory end of our industry, can just sort of exist in the current space of, we don't call ourselves that in a professional space. We accept that what we call ourselves in a professional space probably doesn't translate into real life, but we just let public relations PR go to sort of gradually subside away. So we could effectively do nothing and get on with our own corporations, businesses and lives. And that will probably be true for most people and most organizations. But when Mubrach asked at the end of last year the state of PR report, looking at American PR professionals, people that say they're PR professionals, I think it's quite instructive, and I think it probably summarises where I've been in this presentation, is that there's only 22% of people who define themselves in that way said, well, the current understanding of PR is going to be fine over the next 5 years. That's fine for our clients and it's fine for me. 15% said PR will need to be renamed, which is a tough ask, and many people have tried that over many years. And the majority is probably in a real sort of reality sense of 61% say PR will need to be redefined more broadly than it is. And I think that's where we probably should concentrate our efforts. We should really say the problem isn't with the theory in our industry. If I look at what students learn and what we say we do, I mean, I could have taken any definition of any organisation in the world. I took the CIPR in the UK, and they say public relations is the discipline which looks after reputation, with the aim of earning understanding and support, influencing opinion and behaviour. Plan sustained, establish goodwill and mutual understanding between an organisation and its publics. I don't have a problem with that. So how we describe ourselves, public relations, isn't really the problem. It's how other people see it, redefine it. But it's also worth saying we don't have a problem with history. There are several people that might be the fathers of modern PR. Edward Bernays is certainly one of them, and many of you will know he's a nephew of Sigmund Freud. I mean, actually the Freud. And when he was inventing what we call modern PR, I mean, he was also writing a book called Propaganda at the same time as totalitarian states. We're talking the 1920s into the 1930s. Totalitarian states were thinking the same way. And he was talking of the manipulation of the subconscious mind, and that people are rarely aware of the real reasons which motivate their actions. So if we read that behavioral science and behavioral economics is the future of our industry and the latest new thing, well, it was the basis of our industry being formed 100 years ago, literally. And so we don't have a problem in terms of how our industry is defined or our history. So in doing something about it, it's unlikely that other people are going to redefine what we do in a different way. So to quote the great American June Jordan, writing to South African women, a phrase that so many people have used, and we're the ones that we've been waiting for. We're the people that have to do something about it in how we are and how we act and how we behave. And probably we have to be prouder and more confident of what we do, and we have to make it our goal to stride through the things that people think about PR and some of the common misperceptions of PR. So that's probably the central point, and the specifics of doing that are to take responsibility for reputation, brand and trust, and establish that as our area. I said earlier, I think it's one of the two crucial things that marketing services does: reputation, brand and trust. And when we look at that, why is that so crucial? Well, organizations with the best reputation can charge more for their products, they can achieve more with less marketing spend, influence governments more than their rivals, enter new markets more easily than their rivals, and can sometimes get the benefit of the doubt. I think we all know that, but it's always worth saying it. But what's more important is that we should be involved in 3 of the 4 things that lead to a great reputation, and we can even be the gateway for the 4th. So while we're not responsible for the products and services of the organizations we work for or our clients, we can certainly be responsible for measuring, monitoring what people think and customers think of those services and products. And the other 3 things should be fundamental to what we do. Clearly, great communication is fundamental to what we do, but making sure that organizations have a clear purpose and then live by it, by having a fantastic culture for doing the right thing, is what we should do. So fundamental to the future of what we do is to take that control for reputation and brand. The second thing, and something that I've really concentrated on the last 20 years of my work, is to absolutely be clear that we're involved in more than just communication, or more than communication. Now, communication is a complex and wonderful thing, but we can't be advisors at the top level if we don't if we don't influence more than that. So my favorite crisis quote, lots of you will know, from Stephen Covey, is you can't talk your way out of problems you behaved yourself into. It is so true, which means that when I'm in a situation, an issue situation with a client or a crisis situation, I always ask, do we have a behavior problem or a communication problem? And except in very rare instances, my spoiler alert, it's always a behavioral problem. It's never a communication crisis. It's a problem of behavior that has become an issue of reputation. So it can only be addressed by changing behavior, and we can only advise at the top table if we're advising on changing behavior of what our organizations do and our clients do, not just how they communicate what they've decided to do. That's the second, well, apart from acting bigger, I guess it's the second specific thing that we need to do. The third, and I've only got 4 because I think we need to concentrate on a few things. The third is to stop pretending the impossible is possible, and we just do it all the time. And as far as I can see, we carry on doing it. In the time when lawyers have stopped doing it and management consultants have stopped doing it, I think we've carried on pretending that the impossible is possible. So my specific list of, and I know we're not going to stop doing all of these things, but we really should. And if we have a North Star, maybe we can think more about it. We really should be clear that change campaigns can't be change campaigns unless there's market testing and there's behavioral science rigor involved in them and behind them. And change campaigns are probably front and center of the future of what we do. We should refuse to pitch half-baked, even if detailed, creative ideas without knowing all of the things that we would need to do to develop them properly. We absolutely should stop pretending the budgets of a few $100,000 can move the dial. It's always going to be a few $1 million if it's going to work. You can't do things tomorrow, and we should insist on an integrated approach, because the world is integrated, as I talked about earlier, even if our client happens to be, or our company happens to be, divided into silos without leadership from the top, the involvement of whatever silos exist, customer service, distribution, marketing, advertising, customer communication, whatever those are, without insisting on an integrated approach. We can't be successful in the things that we do. So fundamentally, we should stop pretending the impossible is possible, but we do it all the time. Well, I think I might have an extra one that I said. Most importantly, we should build consultancies that can deliver on our potential. And I think here we're still a cottage industry, and it suits us. I've benefited from that. I co-founded a company, it's been acquired, very happy to be part of a bigger company. But without going into it in greater detail, take the biggest agency in the world, Edelman. There's 6,000 people. I didn't take the largest management consultancy. Accenture is 740,000 people. It's 125 times as big. 1 billion revenue versus 64 billion. From that, mathematicians can see that Edelman's year per hour is twice Accenture's, but that's because Accenture's in 120 countries and Edelman's in 60. So we do actually need to build consultancies of the scale that will be able to make the impact of the things I've been talking about. My final specific of our future manifesto together as people that are labelled PR people, even if we don't want to be, is to think big. And I just thought all I would do is just talk an example and then leave you with a thought and then hand back to Philip for questions. My favourite initiative, and I'm not attributing this to PR people, but I'm just attributing it to the canvas of probably the largest stage. It's one that I play, and I advise countries. It's one of my special areas. And I'm in awe of the major nation branding initiatives. Louvre Abu Dhabi is probably my favourite. 2007 agreement between the United Arab Emirates and the French government to transfer a very significant part of the Louvre's treasures to a new purpose-built, amazing building, Louvre Abu Dhabi, convey the name Louvre on the gallery. It's an amazing building. I've been, it's wonderful. And in return, if we look at the deal in a little bit of overall detail, in return, the UAE bought military hardware and other things from France. The UAE gains a world-class museum and a tourist destination par excellence and status. The whole thing was actually delivered in 10 years, which is amazing. If you live in a country with planning laws like I do, like the United Kingdom, you can hardly believe it. 17 French museums and galleries shared €1 billion and transformed the landscape of France. In 2021, the deal was extended for 10 years. That meant those French galleries shared another €165 million. And in return, UAE relaxed its but in return for the 10 years, relaxed its exclusivity. So the Louvre is pursuing similar deals in Saudi Arabia. And that gives the Louvre the chance of being the best gallery in the world. And I think that's a fantastic example of partnership, nation brand building. On a corporate level, and I won't go through now, I absolutely adore the educational publisher in Japan called Benesse, one of the 4 largest companies in Japan, just come back into private ownership from being on the market. Now called Benesse Holdings. It's partnership with the Benesse Foundation to create probably the greatest art destination in the world. The galleries on the islands of Naoshima and Teshima in the Inland Sea in Japan since 1996 is absolutely breathtaking. And I won't go through a case study of that now, but I would urge to look at that as because we always have to, I think, just imagine what is possible. Imagine the possibility in what we're doing. And the 4th strand, and that's why it's the final strand of what I'm talking about today, is encouraging us all to think big. And I thought, rather than just leave with a summing up, I think I might go back a little bit. I think that the summing up I'm leaving you with is thinking that I passionately try and define what I do as outside PR and public relations, but I do sometimes use the term and accept that it's there. I do think we need to change some of our behaviours in the ways that I've talked about: thinking bigger, acting bigger, building bigger consultancies, taking hold of reputation and brand inside the organisations, and talking about behaviour. I mean, that's the things I think we should do at the top end of our profession and the senior professionals matters of road. And so I just thought I'd leave you with one thing in terms of what I try and do in my job is think about today, but also think about tomorrow and next year. And I just wonder how many of us are thinking about this. So I just thought I'd leave you with a thought piece. In 2021, I took this relationship, but in 2021, the WHO announced that 11th of March 2025 will be the day when the world will look back on 5 years of COVID and commemorate the loss of all those lives. But it's also going to be a 5-year commemoration of things that fundamentally changed a whole generation, from mental health to how young people are, to how we react with technology and interact with technology. So I'll leave you with a, if you work in an organisation like that, or you have a client like that, I hope that that's something you're thinking of. And if you're not, maybe it's something that you'll think of from now. So I'm going to say thank you to the IPRA for asking me to speak, and thank you, Philip, for your role in that. And now hand back to you. And I suppose,
Jamie, thank you so much for that. That was excellent, thought-provoking, and very clear. We've got a bunch of questions that have been placed already, so I shall get to them. And perhaps first kick off with one of my own. It's something that we've seen in the naming of often of national associations around the world, who were historically PR associations, and they're now PR and communications groups. We see this also for companies. And I wonder, is it because they're defining those two terms differently, or what is it, do you think, that is causing this change? Where you could argue that PR already incorporates communications. This is the conundrum.
No, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I mean, I completely agree with you, Philip. I mean, essentially, as I talked about with all of our definitions, the definition of public relations is way broader than communications, and it covers in its definition, it's a much more senior strategic function. However, the vernacular usage of PR, as particularly PR, I think I think any of us know, if someone says, and it happens to this day, and I'm assuming it's not just me that sees it, if someone says, we'll get the PRs to do that, or you're a PR, aren't you? That has seen to be possibly the least respected profession of all the ones around the board table. And I think that people moved to corporate communications, and therefore the industry bodies sort of said, well, we'll just accept reality and accept that communication is now a higher level discipline than public relations and PR. But I don't buy it. But yes, I think that's where it comes from. I think it comes from the way that PR is used in the Anglo-Saxon world. And there, I guess I'm talking primarily London and New York, but I do think that has gone across with English, the language of much of business. I do think that's true in other countries as well.
Super, thank you for that. We have a question from Rob McIver, who's in London, a retired banker. Is part of the problem that in the corporate world, at least, public relations, or more pertinently, perhaps reputational impact, is seen as something that is added on at the end of a management decision process rather than being an integral part of it?
Well, it definitely is part of the problem in some organisations. I mean, those of us that think we're strategic and good clearly want to be as involved as early as we can in the process. I think I do still see situations where people make a decision. I mean, I think it's fine for me to share. I mentioned that I have a non-exec life in the horse racing industry. I mean, I recently, like most sports in the world have revenue problems and have problems that the top end needs to monetize and break away from or at least distinguish itself from the wider pyramid of the sport. So horse racing, like many other sports, needs to premierize itself. But the first iteration that the people in horse racing decided would be premier racing was that to say in the UK that premier race days needed to be the focus of the cream of our sport, and that there are 170 premier race days in a year, which clearly is nonsense. But actually, that decision was taken, and the marketing bodies in horse racing were told to market 170 premier race days. and within 6 months, that's been found to be ridiculous. So it still happens, Rob, that people make management decisions, and say, go and communicate that. I think I try. I think we all try as often as possible to nip that in the bud, by using whatever tactics we can use. And I think we use access. I think now in almost every single organisation there is a person on the board or the management board to which nominally reputation management, PR, communications report into, if that person isn't responsible. And then we need that person, don't we, to work in the right way and understand what it is we do. But I agree with the question. Unfortunately, bad behaviour and bad decisions still happen.
Indeed. So I have a question from Gray, who is from an agency in Harare. And he's asking about how global is PR in terms of a definition. As I said, he's in Africa. And he finds sometimes that cultural imperatives sometimes dictate how we relate with leaders or business or otherwise and decision makers. So is it a global reality? Do you see these geographical differences in the way that we use this terminology?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, I'm tempted to say you might know better than me. However, I mean, Lanson's, I don't know if it's a function of London being an outward-looking city. I mean, essentially, the organisations, whether they're banks or financial services companies or advertising agencies or former PR companies or whatever we are, if we don't look outward and export, London isn't big enough for us. So we look internationally. So Lanson's has been always, even before acquisition by Team Farner, has been part of international networks. And the biggest one we're part of is called PROI, which is Public Relations Organisations. Internationally, it has over 100 consultancies, part of it, and over 70 countries. And PR does seem to be the common term. So PR seems to be the common term. The other network we're part of is Global Communication Partners. It's a much smaller network. That's essentially what you might describe as the old world, the former Western world, plus South Korea, effectively, and that uses communication. So that says communication. So I'm tempted to say my experience is that PR and public relations is the closest to a global term, but I would say that there are markets where public relations and the term PR has even a lower status than I've sometimes described it. So I think the status of PR varies, and there are certainly markets where I radically want to redefine it. I certainly have been in some countries when I've thought clearly it's normal to a bit as Rob's question earlier. It's clearly normal to bring the person that's described as the PR in later to make the terrible thing look good. And I would radically want to redefine in some markets, but it seems to me that PR is the closest we have, and whether globally we could redefine to strategic communications or reputation management or something else. As I've said, I'm pitching as special situations at the moment, and for me in a professional services space that works, but outside of it I don't think I'm going to be using that term.
No. Okay. So we have Rhea, who's in Greece with the agency V&O, a regular GWA entrant, I might add. And Rhea is appropriately asking questions looking to the future, asking you to be an oracle. What role will emerging technologies play in the future of reputation management? And how can we as professionals leverage these innovations to safeguard and enhance corporate reputations in a global landscape?
It's a really good question, and I wrestle with this a lot, and I'm assuming other people on the call do. I mean, so it's been possible for a very, very long time, as we know, through technology at the top end of the reputation job. It's been possible for a very long time to say to a wealthy individual, because there typically are wealthy individuals that use this, what is it about, which thing in all the Google search, things that Google search throws up, which thing do you like the most and which things do you like the least? Because employers for 12 months, and the thing you like the most will be the top of most people's Google search, and the thing you like the least will not be in the top 10 Google search. And typically, in my experience, and I can't speak for everyone, the companies seem to all be based in Austin, Texas, and we don't use them. Because I'm not saying I've never mentioned them to clients, but we don't use them because we think that isn't right. In the same way that we don't use surrogate Wikipedia editing companies, and we don't have surrogate personas set up to write Wikipedia pages. So, but clearly people do. So I draw an ethical boundary at telling people what the world is, but then concentrating on the advice bit is what I've chosen to do. Now, in the wider world, I think we can clearly see, can't we? We can clearly see that now, if you launch a new consumer product, you can see a digital process that happens that I'm probably going to see what kind of thing do I buy. I mean, I love Uniqlo. I love Uniqlo clothes, so Uniqlo things, but things that are like Uniqlo, I'm going to see them very well reviewed on my Instagram feed because it's probably my mechanism of choice. I'm going to see reviews of new things. They're going to find their way to me, and they're going to find their way to all the things that I use, and that's incredibly normal in consumer marketing, and that's what's happening. And we obviously have to be in that involved. Now, when political parties use those things currently in the Western world, that's frowned upon. However, in the recent Indian election, that clearly happened all the time. You can find almost every single candidate in the recent Indian election with deep fakes, varying from what I can see, and I'm not an expert, from what I can see, you can see things produced by supporters of candidates purporting to show candidates meeting famous people who they quite possibly have never met, or famous Indian TV chefs or whatever it is. And so this thing is happening. So I'm inclined to say that there's going to be a huge part of the world that is going to be this cyber war, and people that do what we do are going to be part of that. I don't know what you would call yourself, but that's going to happen, and they're going to be companies like that. American regulation and how that then is taken up by the EU is going to be the fundamental decision point. So after the American election, what things are outlawed or allowed to continue is going to be key. And I would have a personal view and say that if Biden wins, then a lot more things will be outlawed. If Trump wins, a lot less things will be outlawed, and our world will become very different. And it's going to redefine us. And we're all going to have individual choices. I mean, my ethical choice is probably going to be not to set up a cyber battling digital company, but that would be a valid choice, especially in America, if those things are allowed. So I think you have to be on the edge of that. So what does it mean for us if we're in smaller companies? I mean, it was one of the reasons why we were happy to be acquired last year, because we're now part of an 800-person company, and the tech innovation is driven from Zurich. And we felt as an 80-person firm, we didn't have the resource to compete. Now, even as an 800-person firm, do we have the resource to compete in a WPP world and an Omnicom world? I mean, let's see. So those things matter as well. I think there's a hugely strong case for saying, if you're not going to exist on your own right as a small specialist or freelance, then probably you need to be part of something bigger for this tech battle. But I think there's probably effectively a choice of what it is we do. And if you're going to work in this industry for 40 more years, it's a really interesting choice.
Thank you for that. We have a final question from Robert Masters, who's in Australia. And I'm not quite sure if it's a question for you or for me, actually, or associations in general. Do you think we should embark on an international awareness campaign of what public relations incorporates and stands for?
Well, I'd love to hear your views as well, Philip. I mean, I'm going to kick off and say, goodness, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, I spent a lot of years of my life giving time in the UK to the PRCA. And I was very happy to give years to the PRCA. Very glad I did. I got a lot out of it. And there are some common subjects, aren't there, that we all can benefit from. There's the common subject of just integrity of pricing, integrity of pitching, and then working together to define and redefine what we do. It's been like herding cats. It's been impossible. I mean, we can't all go into a room and say, let's never spend 200 hours on a creative pitch for a relatively modest fee, because someone's going to do it, and then we're all going to do it again, and then we're all going to win the pitch for the fee, and then they're going to say, oh, there's only half of it, and we'll probably say, oh, you can probably do it for half of it, and this goes on all the time, and it's commercial world. So I don't mind. I mean, what can I say? I can't say I've never done it. and people carry on doing it. I think where I've got to, and where I got to with this, is saying, I just don't know if it would happen. I'd love it if it could happen. Maybe we could all coalesce. Maybe these days of campaigns, because we're in a bottom-up world, aren't we? I mean, we're clearly not going to have our Me Too movement, but probably the thing that works is if we coalesce around a few things that we believe in. Maybe that's what I was trying to talk about at the end of saying that, we should be prouder. I think it is. I was being funny about to mention FGS, but it's a funny question, isn't it? I mean, if you say, we are strategic advisors in the stakeholder economy, it's like, are you going to tell your mum that's what you do? When your mum says, what do you do? Does an FGS person say, oh, mum, I've got this great job. I'm a strategic advisor in the stakeholder economy. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I've tried it, as I said, with reputation management. But I think if we coalesce around being proud of what we do, I think saying that, becoming experts in reputation and saying that's ours, I think is what I've tried to do, and I think that's right. I think advising on behaviour is the thing, and then being the people that think big and say these forces can come together. If it's the Olympics we're thinking about, it's not the 2024 Olympics we should be thinking about. It's at least the 2028 Olympics if we're thinking about the Olympics. And we make that step. And I probably do think, and I'm clearly not alone in this, because WPP clearly think the same thing. I probably do think we need larger consultancies because we just do. And, whatever Burson becomes, whatever Edelman becomes in future, I mean, maybe we see a day where 2 or 3 of those merge, or maybe we see a day when Accenture says, blimey, it is worth doing what you do. Edelman Accenture is the thing of the future, or whatever it is. Maybe we see a day, but I think we probably need to see the day when our companies are bigger. But probably rather than a global campaign, maybe we could agree these are the 4 tenets that we're all going to push, and then maybe all the associations push, and then and then it's bottom up and it's not top down, because a lot of us wonder whether top down things work anymore. In fact, I sometimes work on now where there is not a launch. The whole launch day, maybe it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Philip, I just want to see what you think as well.
I think from our perspective, campaign also suggests you've got a beginning, a middle, and an end. Whereas I think what associations try to do is be a continuum, in that we hope that we are always helping to improve the image of public relations by what we do. I mean, IPRA's current band is we call ourselves a leading trust and ethics in global communication, and we try to make that part of everything that we do. And things like AI and fake news, etc., I think is a huge challenge, and we started to look at that, as have other organisations, with guidelines in terms of use of that. So I think it is what we do all the time that has to be part of that. Including things like these webinars, of course, which are always helping all of us understand things better. So on that topic, Tony, thank you so much for that. It was excellent and thought-provoking, just as I rather hoped it might be. We're back next month in Italy, talking about crisis management. So that's an interesting time of the Italian history to be talking about crises. And we'll see you all then. So thank you all for listening today. If you want to catch up, this should be on our website next week with this recording, which should be up for about a year or so if you want to tell your friends. So Tony, once more, thank you very much and goodbye to everybody.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.